fold, but as the very mind that gives birth to thought, mystery, and existence itself. This question has haunted philosophers, scientists, and mystics alike. To even whisper it is to challenge some of the deepest assumptions of modern science. That consciousness is a rare, local accident of biology, a fleeting spark in an indifferent universe. Yet, at the same time, to consider the possibility that the universe itself might be conscious opens the door to wonder, an ancient wonder, renewed by the strange discoveries of modern physics and the unyielding questions of philosophy. We live inside a mystery that has never fully revealed itself. Humanity has long asked where we come from, why we exist, and what the ultimate nature of reality might be. Every culture, every era, has produced stories about the cosmos as something alive, aware, and purposeful. From the pantheistic visions of ancient sages to the cutting-edge frontiers of cosmology, the idea of a self-aware universe keeps resurfacing like a persistent dream, defying every attempt to dismiss it entirely. But what does it mean for the universe to be self-aware? Is it the same kind of awareness you and I experience? An inner field of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions? Or is it something vastly different? A form of knowing so alien that we can only gesture at it with metaphors? Perhaps it would not think in words, but in galaxies. Perhaps its memory is written in the distribution of stars, its dreams etched into the ripples of space-time itself. The skeptic may argue that such ideas are romantic nonsense. After all, science teaches us that the universe is governed by laws, mathematical, precise, indifferent. Stars ignite, planets orbit, galaxies collide, all without thought or intention. The human brain is where awareness resides, not in the void between galaxies. To imagine otherwise is to anthropomorphize nature, projecting our fleeting inner life onto a cosmos that cares nothing for us. And yet, even within the strict boundaries of physics, cracks appear. The act of observation in quantum mechanics seems to blur the line between matter and mind. The eerie precision of mathematical laws raises questions about why the universe is intelligible at all. The astonishing fine-tuning of cosmic constants hints that reality may be more than a blind accident. And when we look deep into the night sky, we cannot shake the feeling that there is something more, something watching, something unfolding with intent. Between the poles of skepticism and belief lies the true mystery. If consciousness is nothing more than a byproduct of neural activity, then once the last brain flickers out, awareness vanishes forever, leaving the universe dark and empty. But if consciousness is woven into the very fabric of reality, if the universe itself is a kind of mind, then our own awareness is not an anomaly but a reflection, a spark from a far greater flame. To ask whether the universe is self-aware is to ask whether we are isolated beings in a dead expanse, or whether we are thoughts within a living cosmos. It is to stand at the threshold between science and philosophy, between what we can measure and what we can only imagine. It is a question that dares us to look beyond certainty and step into the unknown. Consider this: every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a star. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, these are not foreign elements scattered by chance. They are the universe condensed into form, reshaped into life, and given the power to ask questions. When you gaze at the stars, you are not just looking at the universe. You are the universe looking back at itself. Could this be a coincidence? Or is it a clue that awareness is not a local glitch, but a universal feature? And if the universe is self-aware, what does that say about our role within it? Are we mere accidents of chemistry? Or are we neurons in a vast cosmic brain, participating in the universe's self-reflection? Do we dream because the cosmos dreams through us? Do we search for meaning because the universe seeks to understand itself through countless living forms? Of course, the danger of such speculation is obvious. We risk crossing from science into myth, from rigorous thought into comforting story. But perhaps the greatest discoveries often begin at the edges of myth, when the imagination dares to touch the impossible. Long before science gave us equations, humanity stared into the heavens and wondered whether the stars had souls. Today, equipped with quantum theory, cosmology, and neuroscience, we revisit those questions not as superstition, but as serious philosophical possibilities. Yet the paradox remains. The universe appears objective, vast, and external, while consciousness is subjective, intimate, and internal. How could the two be the same? To believe in a conscious universe is to collapse the boundary between subject and object, between mind and matter, between the observer and the observed. It is to accept that the ultimate reality may be stranger than even the most brilliant equations suggest. And so, we arrive at the tension that will guide our journey. The materialist conviction that the universe is indifferent and unconscious, versus the radical possibility that it is alive with awareness. This tension is not just intellectual. It is existential. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we understand purpose, and how we imagine the future of humanity. Throughout this exploration, we will move between the known and the unknown, the scientific and the speculative, the skeptical and the wondrous. We will examine what physics tells us, what philosophy dares us to imagine, and what ancient traditions still whisper across time. The question of a self-aware universe is not one that can be settled in a single equation or experiment. It is a mirror, reflecting both our longing for meaning and the mysterious depths of reality itself. And so, we begin where all great journeys begin, with the question, what if the universe is self-aware? Not just a theater of matter and energy, but a mind that dreams through galaxies, evolves through stars, and awakens through us. This is the question that will lead us from the birth of consciousness to the foundations of physics, from the paradoxes of quantum mechanics to the horizons of philosophy. A question that balances skepticism with wonder, science with mystery. Because to even ask it is to acknowledge that we live in a universe that resists final answers. A universe that may never fully reveal its secret, yet beckons us, again and again, to try. And with that, we step into the next part of our journey, tracing the origins of awareness itself. From stardust to self, from the birth of matter to the birth of mind, our next step is to ask how consciousness could arise at all, and whether it is truly confined to us or something much larger. Billions of years ago, long before the first flicker of thought, there was only fire and silence. Stars were the architects of everything we are. In their violent hearts, hydrogen fused into helium, helium into heavier elements, and in their eventual deaths, they scattered iron, carbon, oxygen, and all the ingredients of life across the darkness. Those atoms would one day form oceans, mountains, forests, and brains capable of reflection. From this perspective, consciousness is not a miracle that appeared from nowhere, but the natural continuation of cosmic evolution. Matter organized itself into complexity, complexity gave rise to life, and life eventually learned to think. We, as thinking beings, are stardust brought to awareness, a fleeting moment where the universe opened its eyes. And yet, to say that consciousness is simply an emergent property of matter is to take one side of a deeper debate. Neuroscience tells us that awareness is a result of intricate biological processes. Billions of neurons firing in patterns give rise to thought, memory, sensation, and selfhood. The brain, weighing less than 1.5 kilograms, somehow generates an entire inner universe of experience. To many scientists, there is no need for mysticism here. Just as a hurricane emerges from wind and temperature, consciousness emerges from neurons and electrochemical activity. The self is not a ghost, but a process. The universe is not awake. We are, and that is enough. But this explanation, elegant as it sounds, leaves behind a haunting riddle. How can matter produce the feeling of experience? How can atoms and molecules, however complex, give rise to the redness of red, the sound of music, the ache of longing? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness, and it stands as one of the greatest mysteries of our time. To solve it requires more than mapping neurons. It requires explaining how subjective experience arises from objective processes. Some say it cannot be solved within the current framework of science at all. This is where another possibility enters the stage, one as ancient as philosophy itself. Perhaps consciousness is not created by matter but is woven into the very fabric of reality. Panpsychism, an idea once dismissed as mystical speculation, has returned to the conversation of modern thinkers. It suggests that awareness, in some form, exists everywhere, not only in brains but in atoms, in fields, in the building blocks of the cosmos. In this view, consciousness does not emerge from matter. Matter emerges from consciousness. Our brains are not the sole creators of awareness but instruments that channel it, much like radios tuned to a universal frequency. The tension between these two perspectives, consciousness as an accident of matter versus consciousness as a fundamental feature of existence, creates a fault line in our understanding of reality. One side insists that awareness is fragile, temporary, and local. The other suggests it is ancient, enduring, and cosmic. If the former is true, then we are sparks destined to burn out in a silent universe. If the latter is true, then we are fragments of a vast and eternal mind, reflections of something infinitely larger than ourselves. Consider the strange fact that the universe has produced beings capable of asking these very questions. For billions of years, matter followed the blind laws of physics, expanding, cooling, condensing into stars and galaxies. Then, in one corner of space, atoms combined into molecules, molecules into cells, and cells into creatures that could feel and think. Out of this chain of accidents, or perhaps intentions, the cosmos gave rise to minds that could contemplate their own origins. When you think about your own existence, it is not merely a brain thinking. It is the universe, through you, asking what it is. This is where biology meets cosmology, where the personal and the cosmic intertwine. The human brain, a fragile network of cells, contains within it the history of stars. Your ability to love, to dream, to imagine, is inseparable from supernovas that exploded billions of years ago. You are the product of forces that stretch across cosmic history, and when you wonder about your place in the universe, you embody the very paradox we face. Are we isolated minds in a dead cosmos, or are we the universe reflecting on itself? Skeptics warn us against delusion. They argue that calling humanity the universe aware of itself is nothing more than poetic language. A human mind, they say, is a product of evolution, confined to skull and skin. The stars are indifferent, galaxies have no inner life, and to imagine otherwise is to mistake metaphor for fact. Consciousness, in this view, is rare, local, and temporary, destined to vanish with the last thinking creature. But speculation pushes back with equal force. What if our minds are not isolated bubbles but windows into a greater awareness? What if consciousness is not rare, but abundant, expressed differently across scales we cannot yet fathom? Could galaxies cluster like neurons, exchanging information across cosmic webs? Could the universe itself be a vast neural network, its awareness too immense for us to comprehend? If so, then our thoughts are not solitary sparks but filaments of a larger consciousness, woven into the very structure of existence. Between these poles we stand suspended, unsure which truth holds. Perhaps both are correct in ways we cannot yet reconcile. Perhaps consciousness both emerges from matter and underlies it, just as waves emerge from the ocean yet cannot exist apart from it. The brain might be a lens, focusing something fundamental into the form we call awareness. And so, from stars to self, from atoms to thought, the journey of consciousness traces the same arc as the universe itself. Expansion, complexity, reflection. We are not only made of the cosmos, we are the cosmos asking questions about its own nature. In this way, the origins of awareness are not simply biological but cosmic. Our story does not end at the borders of the brain. It stretches back to the first stars, the first particles, the first whisper of time. As we move forward, the mystery only deepens. If consciousness arises from stardust shaped into neurons, then how does that awareness interact with the very fabric of reality? Does it merely observe, or does it play a role in shaping what is real? To explore this question, we must enter the realm where physics and philosophy collide, where quantum mechanics meets the enigma of mind. Physics is often described as humanity's greatest achievement, the discipline that pulls back the curtain on reality and reveals the hidden machinery of the cosmos. With Einstein's relativity, we learned that space and time are not rigid backdrops but flexible dimensions, warping and stretching under the weight of matter and energy. With quantum mechanics, we discovered a world beneath the surface, where particles behave like waves, probabilities blur into paradoxes, and certainty dissolves into mystery. And with cosmology, we mapped the vast evolution of the universe itself, from a primordial flash of light to the sprawling galaxies we now inhabit. These triumphs give us astonishing predictive power. They allow us to send rockets across space, build technologies that reshape civilization, and describe the age, size, and fate of the universe with uncanny accuracy. And yet, there is a silence at the heart of physics. For all its power to describe the external world, it says nothing about the internal one. Equations can tell us how electrons move, how galaxies cluster, how black holes bend spacetime, but they cannot explain why it feels like something to be alive. Physics gives us the architecture of existence, but not the experience of it. It draws the map of reality, but leaves out the traveler's perspective. This silence becomes clearer the deeper we look. Consider quantum mechanics. Mathematics predicts outcomes with extraordinary precision, yet it forces us to confront the strange role of the observer. Measurement seems to collapse possibility into actuality. But what exactly is doing the collapsing? Is it the act of observation itself, or the awareness of the observer? Physics does not answer this. It leaves us with paradox. Then there is relativity, which reveals that time is not absolute, but relative to speed and gravity. Yet no equation explains the flow of time as we feel it, the inexorable passage from past to present to future. Cosmology can describe the expansion of the universe, but not the profound sense of awe and smallness we feel when staring at the night sky. The paradox grows sharper when we realize how seamlessly physics explains everything else. This predictive success borders on miraculous. The orbit of planets, the flicker of stars, the chemistry of life, all unfold according to equations that work with breathtaking precision. And yet, the very phenomenon through which we know those equations, consciousness, remains untouched. It is as if physics built a cathedral of knowledge but left its central chamber empty. This gap has led to one of the most profound divides in human thought. On one side are the materialists who argue that the silence is temporary, that physics, combined with neuroscience, will one day explain awareness in the same way it explains gravity and electromagnetism. They believe consciousness is an emergent property, nothing more mysterious than weather patterns or fluid turbulence. On the other side are those who insist that the silence is not temporary, but fundamental, that physics, as it stands, cannot reach into the realm of subjective experience. They argue that consciousness is not a byproduct of matter but an aspect of reality itself, as irreducible as space and time. The stakes of this debate are enormous. If physics eventually explains consciousness, then awareness is nothing but an advanced trick of biology, a temporary flicker in a universe indifferent to it. But if physics cannot, then our current framework is incomplete, perhaps missing a hidden dimension of reality, one in which mind and matter are not separate, but deeply entwined. To imagine this tension, think of reality as a grand symphony. Physics provides the sheet music, the notes, the rhythms, the mathematical structure. But consciousness is the experience of the music itself, the soaring melody, the ache of beauty, the thrill of harmony. The sheet music alone does not explain why the music moves us. Likewise, equations describe the cosmos, but they do not capture the way it feels to be a participant in it. This is why physics and philosophy continue to collide. Physics is unrivaled at answering how, but philosophy asks the deeper why. Why should there be something rather than nothing? Why does matter give rise to mind? Why does the universe, in all its complexity, generate beings capable of wonder? These are not idle questions. They are at the very heart of existence. The mystery intensifies when we remember that all of physics itself is known only through consciousness. Every experiment, every equation, every observation is filtered through the lens of awareness. Without consciousness, the universe might still exist, but there would be no one to know it, no meaning in the equations, no story in the stars. Physics, for all its grandeur, depends on the very thing it cannot explain. And so, we face the central paradox. Physics describes reality with unmatched precision, yet it cannot touch the inner light of awareness. Philosophy steps in to bridge the gap, to remind us that reality is not just particles and fields but also the mystery of experience. Between the two, we find ourselves at the threshold of something greater, something that hints at a deeper truth still hidden from us. This threshold leads us into the next chapter of our journey, where the mystery of consciousness collides with the strangeness of quantum physics itself. For if there is anywhere in science where the line between mind and matter begins to blur, it is in the quantum puzzle of observation. And there, perhaps, we may find the first glimmer of an answer to the question, what is the nature of reality? What does it mean to observe the universe? At first glance, the question feels simple. To observe is to look, to measure, to record. But in the strange, fragile world of quantum mechanics, the very act of observation seems to bend reality itself. Particles that exist in ghostly superpositions, here and there, alive and dead, spinning clockwise and counterclockwise all at once, suddenly snap into one definite state the moment we look. It is as if reality waits for us, like a stage set behind a curtain, refusing to take its final form until an audience arrives. This is the heart of the quantum puzzle, the observer effect. For over a century, physicists and philosophers alike have wrestled with this unnerving possibility, that consciousness, the very thing we so often treat as separate from physics, could be entangled with the deepest workings of the cosmos. To understand the stakes, we begin in Copenhagen, Denmark, with a young and daring physicist named Niels Bohr. In the early 20th century, Bohr and his colleagues were confronted with an unsettling truth. The equations of quantum mechanics could predict probabilities with uncanny accuracy, but they did not tell us what was really happening beneath the surface. Was the electron truly smeared out like a wave until measured, or was that simply a convenient description of our ignorance? Bohr's interpretation, later called the Copenhagen interpretation, proposed something radical. Quantum states do not exist as definite things until they are observed. Instead, they live in a liminal haze of probabilities, collapsing into certainty only when measured. Reality, then, is not solid and independent. It crystallizes through interaction. And here lies the unsettling twist. Who or what counts as the observer? Is it the measuring device, the human eye, or consciousness itself? Albert Einstein was horrified by this suggestion. Do you really believe the moon is not there when you are not looking at it? He once challenged. For Einstein, the universe was real, objective, and independent of human awareness. He believed the quantum world must be hiding deeper layers of truth, hidden variables, that would eventually restore a clockwork reality beneath the veil of uncertainty. But Bohr disagreed, and their legendary debates still echo across physics classrooms today. And then came Schrödinger's cat, a thought experiment that remains one of the most haunting symbols of the quantum age. Imagine a cat sealed in a box with a quantum device, say a particle that has a 50% chance of decaying. If it decays, poison is released, and the cat dies. If it doesn't, the cat lives. According to quantum mechanics, until the box is opened, the particle exists in both decayed and undecayed states simultaneously, which means the cat is both alive and dead. A macabre superposition. Only when we open the box, only when an observer looks, does the cat collapse into one reality.
But is it truly the conscious observer that causes this collapse? Or is that just a poetic illusion? This question has divided thinkers into camps as strange and diverse as the quantum world itself. One path forward is the many worlds interpretation, first proposed by Hugh Everett in the 1950s. Instead of collapsing probabilities into one outcome, Everett suggested that every possibility happens, just not in the same universe. In this view, when you open the box, the universe splits. In one branch, you see a living cat. In another, a dead one. Consciousness does not cause collapse. It simply rides the wave of a branching multiverse, endlessly splitting into parallel realities. To some, this is thrilling, an infinite tapestry of universes unfurling at every quantum event. To others, it feels extravagant, as though multiplying worlds is an escape from facing the real mystery. On the other side lies the more audacious idea: consciousness causes collapse. Here, the observer effect is not a metaphor but a fundamental truth. The universe does not choose until a conscious mind is present to witness it. Our awareness, in this radical view, is woven into the fabric of quantum physics. Reality is not just out there, waiting to be revealed. It is co-authored by consciousness itself. But is there evidence for such a daring claim? The experiments at the heart of quantum mechanics are tantalizing but ambiguous. The famous double-slit experiment, for example, shows that particles behave like waves, rippling and interfering until measured. Place a detector to see which slit the particle passes through, and suddenly the wave vanishes. The act of measurement changes the outcome. Some interpret this as consciousness shaping reality. Others argue it is the physical act of interaction, no mind required, that triggers collapse. A measuring device counts as much as a human eye. Consciousness, they say, is unnecessary. And yet, the mystery deepens. In variations of these experiments, when information about the particle's path is erased or delayed, interference patterns reappear, as though the particle knows what we know, or perhaps as though knowledge itself is entangled with physical reality. To skeptics, this is an illusion of interpretation, a trick of equations misread as metaphysics. But to dreamers, it hints at something extraordinary, that the universe is not indifferent to awareness, but responsive to it. Here, science and philosophy lock eyes in a standoff. One side insists that quantum mechanics is simply mathematics, no more mystical than a weather forecast, and that consciousness is an emergent phenomenon of the brain with no role in physics. The other side whispers that perhaps we have underestimated the enigma of awareness, that it is not a byproduct of particles, but a participant in their dance. The stakes are profound. If the many worlds interpretation is true, then consciousness is a passenger, endlessly duplicated across infinite realities, never collapsing anything, merely drifting. If consciousness causes collapse holds weight, then awareness is not passive. It is the brushstroke painting reality into being. And so, the observer effect becomes more than a technical puzzle. It becomes a mirror that asks us, are we the witnesses of the universe, or are we the co-creators of it? Are we shadows chasing after equations, or are we light, casting the equations themselves into form? The truth remains unresolved. No experiment has yet proven consciousness to be fundamental, nor fully removed it from suspicion. And perhaps this tension is the essence of the quantum puzzle. The dance between evidence and mystery, between what physics tells us and what philosophy dares us to imagine. As we stand before this paradox, we are left with two paths of wonder. One where consciousness is merely an emergent whisper in an indifferent cosmos, and one where it is the very spark that calls reality into existence. Either way, the mystery deepens, and the stakes grow larger than physics alone. And so we turn to the next horizon, toward the possibility that consciousness itself might not be confined to us, or even to life, but could be a property of the universe at large. Could it be that the cosmos, vast and ancient, carries within it a form of awareness that dwarfs our own? This is the question that will guide us forward, as we leave the laboratory's equations behind and enter the philosophical storm of cosmic consciousness. Underneath the cosmic silence, a daring idea emerges, a vision so bold that it unsettles both physicists and philosophers alike. What if the universe itself is not just a vast stage of particles and forces, but something closer to a brain? A colossal network, pulsing with connections, processing information the way neurons fire within our skulls. At first, this sounds like science fiction, a poetic metaphor. But behind the poetry lies an unsettling symmetry. When scientists mapped the large-scale structure of the cosmos, tracing the filaments of galaxies stretching across billions of light-years, they found patterns strikingly similar to the neural web inside the human brain. Two structures separated by scale and substance, yet echoing the same architecture. Here enters the cosmic brain hypothesis. Could it be that the universe itself thinks, not in words or human language, but in flows of energy and information? In this view, galaxies become the nodes of a neural lattice, and cosmic filaments function like axons, transmitting signals across unfathomable distances. The fabric of reality, once seen as lifeless and indifferent, takes on the shimmering quality of a mind. To anchor this speculation, thinkers often turn to panpsychism, the philosophy that consciousness is not an accidental spark but a fundamental ingredient of matter itself. If awareness pervades even the smallest particle, then scaling upward, why not imagine the cosmos as a vast emergent mind? Just as billions of neurons produce human thought, perhaps billions of galaxies give rise to something beyond us, an awareness stitched into the universe's very structure. Skeptics recoil. To them, this is a metaphor mistaken for physics, pattern recognition inflated into fantasy. The resemblance between neural networks and galactic webs, they argue, is a coincidence of mathematics, not evidence of consciousness. Information theory may describe the universe's dynamics, but that does not mean the universe thinks. Brains process meaning. The cosmos merely follows equations. And yet, visionaries counter that equations themselves might be the language of a universal mind. After all, our brains reduce to electrical impulses and biochemical reactions. Yet from that machinery emerges love, memory, and imagination. Why should the cosmos be incapable of its own emergent mystery? If we are the universe becoming conscious of itself, might we be tiny sparks of a larger intelligence, just as single neurons know nothing of the mind they help create? Enter the holographic universe theory. Here, reality is not what it appears but a projection, every point in space encoding the whole, much like a hologram. If true, then the universe operates less like a physical machine and more like an information field. The question becomes unavoidable. Is information alone enough to generate consciousness? And if so, is our universe not just a container of awareness but itself a form of awareness unfolding?
The contrast is sharp. Either the cosmic brain is a grand metaphor, beautiful but empty, or it is the most profound revelation in history, that we live not inside a dead void, but within a thinking cosmos. For now, no experiment can decide. The evidence is suggestive, the logic enticing, but certainty remains elusive. Still, the idea lingers, impossible to silence. And as we trace this possibility, a new question arises. If the universe could be conscious in itself, what would that mean for us, the fleeting creatures inside it? To explore that, we must turn to the boundary where science blurs into philosophy, and where humanity begins to ask, what is our role inside a self-aware cosmos? Across the ages, before telescopes measured starlight and before equations mapped the curvature of space-time, human beings gazed into the night sky and intuited something profound, that the universe was alive. Mystical traditions from Vedanta to Taoism to Buddhism spoke of consciousness not as a private spark within the brain but as the very ground of reality. The Upanishads whispered that Atman, the self, was not separate from Brahman, the cosmic totality. Taoist sages described the Tao as the flowing principle of the cosmos, animating all things in an endless cycle. Buddhism taught that reality is an interconnected web, with no hard boundaries between self and universe. These were not casual metaphors. They were lived philosophies, shaping civilizations for millennia. Modern science, in contrast, emerged with a radically different voice. Physics reduced the universe to particles, forces, and mathematical laws. Neuroscience casts consciousness as the outcome of neurons firing, synapses connecting, chemicals exchanging signals. Awareness, in this view, is a byproduct of matter, not its foundation. The cosmos is not alive, it is indifferent, and our sense of meaning arises from evolutionary utility, not cosmic truth. The divergence could not seem sharper, and yet, hidden within the divide are surprising resonances. When physicists describe quantum entanglement, they speak of particles linked across space, their states inseparable no matter the distance. Does this not echo Buddhism's teaching of interdependence, that nothing exists in isolation? When cosmologists reveal that the universe began as a singularity, a point of infinite density and unity, do we not hear faint parallels to Vedanta's vision of the one from which all multiplicity arises? Even neuroscience, when probing the brain's default mode network and states of ego dissolution, brushes against what ancient mystics called transcendence. It seems that the more science learns, the less foreign the old intuitions become. And yet the disagreements remain sharp. For Vedanta, consciousness is ultimate. For physics, it is derivative. For Buddhism, the self is an illusion created by clinging. For neuroscience, the self is an evolutionary construct that aids survival. For Taoism, harmony lies in flowing with the Tao. For cosmology, harmony is a poetic lens, not a measurable law. Where ancient wisdom sought meaning, modern science insists on mechanism. Where sages spoke of wholeness, researchers demand reduction. The contrast is a dance of reverence and doubt, of mystery and measurement. Perhaps the most striking revelation is not which side holds the truth, but that both may be incomplete on their own. Ancient traditions give language to the felt reality of interconnectedness. Modern science gives tools to test the mechanics of that connection. One speaks to the heart of experience, the other to the structure of the external world. Together, they form a paradox, a bridge across millennia. And so we stand at a crossroads. Is consciousness the ultimate fabric of the cosmos, as the mystics declared, or a fleeting illusion generated by neurons, as science insists? Or could it be both, that the universe wears two masks, one of matter, one of meaning? To answer, we must dive deeper into the frontier where modern physics reimagines reality not as substance, but as information itself. Yet what makes this dialogue even more striking is how each side seems to be circling the same question from opposite directions. Where does awareness begin? For the mystics, awareness is the first principle, what the Upanishads called pure consciousness, timeless and universal, from which all phenomena arise. In their vision, the stars, the earth, even our thoughts are ripples in an infinite sea of mind. Modern science, on the other hand, begins from the opposite pole. Matter first, consciousness last. To the neuroscientist, consciousness emerges only after billions of years of evolution, once brains acquire the complexity to model themselves and their environment. From this vantage, awareness is a latecomer, a flicker of self-recognition in a cosmos otherwise blind. But what if these opposing accounts are two halves of a larger truth? Some physicists and philosophers now argue that consciousness may be woven into the fabric of reality in ways neither camp fully comprehends. Consider panpsychism, a view that resonates with both ancient thought and modern speculation. It proposes that consciousness is not an emergent accident but a universal property, present in some primitive form in all matter. The idea feels ancient, echoing the Buddhist belief in sentience pervading all beings and the Taoist sense that every stone, stream, and star is alive with the Tao. Yet panpsychism has also appeared in the writings of serious modern thinkers like Bertrand Russell and contemporary analytic philosophers searching for a way out of the hard problem of consciousness. Even physics, usually allergic to such metaphysical language, cannot entirely avoid these resonances. When John Wheeler, the legendary physicist, proposed it from bit, suggesting that information might underlie all of reality, he was unknowingly echoing the Vedic claim that the world is woven from a subtle, non-material substrate. When quantum mechanics shows us that observation collapses probabilities into outcomes, some compare it, controversially but seductively, to the Buddhist notion that reality has no fixed essence until it is perceived. These parallels are not proof, but they are reminders that the boundary between mysticism and science is more porous than we once believed. Still, caution is vital. Mystical traditions are not laboratories, and their truths are not falsifiable in the way modern science demands. The Buddhist claim that selfhood is illusory may resonate with neuroscience studies showing the brain constructs identity as a useful fiction, but the methodologies differ radically. Science builds theories on controlled experiments, statistics, and replication. Mysticism builds on introspection, intuition, and lived spiritual practice. Where one prizes objectivity, the other prioritizes subjectivity. The result is not contradiction but complementarity, two visions of the same mystery, each illuminating what the other obscures. Take the Taoist concept of Wu Wei, effortless action aligned with the flow of the universe. To a physicist, this may sound poetic at best, irrelevant at worst. Yet when biologists study the emergent intelligence of ant colonies or flocking birds, they see systems organizing without central control, moving with a harmony that seems almost conscious. Taoism captured this insight millennia ago in metaphor, while science now reveals its mechanics. The language differs, but the intuition, about patterns greater than the sum of their parts, remains eerily similar.
Neuroscience, too, occasionally brushes against the borders of ancient wisdom. In meditation research, scientists observe how trained practitioners can quiet the brain's default mode network, dissolving the rigid sense of ego. Long before fMRI scans, Buddhist monks described this as the realization of anatta, the no-self. Mystics called it liberation. Neuroscientists call it altered brain states. But in both accounts, the boundaries between self and world blur, hinting that consciousness may not be as local or individual as we assume. The disagreements, however, are just as striking. To Vedanta, consciousness is eternal and cannot be destroyed. To neuroscience, it dies with the body, extinguished when neurons stop firing. To Buddhism, reincarnation is possible not through a permanent self but through continuity of awareness. To physics, the conservation of energy has nothing to do with soul or rebirth. To Taoism, harmony with the cosmos brings meaning. To modern cosmology, the universe is indifferent to human longing. These clashes remind us that mystical systems aim to guide lives, while science aims to explain mechanisms. One seeks purpose, the other precision, and yet human hunger is for both. We long to know not just how the universe works, but why it feels the way it does to exist within it. Ancient traditions supply the language of meaning. Modern science supplies the language of law. Perhaps, like two eyes giving depth perception, we need both perspectives to glimpse reality in 3 dimensions. The bridge between ancient wisdom and modern inquiry is not a simple unification but a tension, a dialogue across centuries. The mystic may accuse science of blindness to the inner life. The scientist may accuse mysticism of clinging to comforting illusions. But both are, in their own ways, reaching for the same ineffable mystery. Why does anything exist at all, and why does it feel like something to experience it? And as these voices converge, one possibility begins to crystallize. Maybe reality is not substance alone, nor consciousness alone, but something deeper, an interplay where matter and mind are 2 aspects of the same hidden principle. The ancients named it Brahman, Tao, or Dharma. The modern physicist calls it quantum fields, space-time, or information. What we call it may matter less than the awe it inspires. That the universe, whether alive or indifferent, is far stranger and more profound than any single worldview can capture. To venture further, we must follow science down its most radical path. The idea that reality itself may be computation, that beneath matter and energy lies not substance but code. Here, the mystics' whispers of cosmic order collide with digital physics, and the universe reveals itself not as a clockwork machine, but perhaps as a vast unfolding program. ChatGPT said, "The question now sharpens into something almost unbearable. If the universe is self-aware, where is the evidence? Do we see traces of consciousness etched into the laws of nature, or are we merely projecting human longing onto a silent cosmos?" The debate begins with what many scientists call the most haunting clue of all: cosmological fine-tuning. The constants of physics, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, the rate of cosmic expansion, are not random numbers. They fall into a razor-thin range that allows stars to burn, planets to form, chemistry to unfold, and life to emerge. Shift these values even slightly, and the universe collapses into lifeless chaos. To some, this precision feels less like an accident and more like signature, as though the cosmos is arranged with intention, aware of the conditions required for consciousness to awaken within it. But caution immediately follows awe. Skeptics invoke the anthropic principle, the simple fact that we observe a life-permitting universe only because we are here to observe it. If conditions had been otherwise, there would be no one asking questions, no stage for consciousness to speculate. What appears miraculous, they argue, is inevitable from our perspective. The universe may not be fine-tuned for life. Life simply arises in the rare pockets where conditions happen to allow it. The drama dissolves into statistical necessity. Still, the question refuses to vanish. Beyond fine-tuning, we see the patterns of emergence, order rising from chaos across every scale. From atoms to cells, from brains to civilizations, complexity blooms in stepwise cascades, as if matter itself has a hidden tendency to generate awareness. Could this be the universe groping towards self-recognition, a blind process secretly guided by an undercurrent of mind? Or is it simply the logic of evolution, structures persisting because they survive, not because they are destined to awaken? Then there is the mathematical beauty of physics. Time and again, the deepest truths of the universe are expressed not in brute force equations but in elegant symmetries, in forms of breathtaking simplicity. Dirac once said that beauty is the surest guide to truth in physics. Einstein marveled that the universe is comprehensible at all, let alone in such pristine mathematics. Is this beauty a clue that reality is more like a mind than a machine, that we are tapping into a language of consciousness itself? Or is beauty just a bias of human cognition? Our brains evolved to favor patterns and symmetry, projecting aesthetics where only blind law exists. The tension mounts as evidence and illusion blur. For every argument that the universe bears the hallmarks of awareness, there is a counter-argument that we are only seeing reflections of ourselves. Our longing for meaning, our pattern-seeking minds, our refusal to accept a cold and indifferent cosmos, all these make us vulnerable to illusion. And yet, to dismiss the sense of design, the elegance of mathematics, the uncanny fit of conditions, feels equally unsatisfying. The paradox is stark. The universe either whispers of mind or reveals only the echo of our own. Perhaps both are true, that the universe, in birthing us, has indeed become aware of itself, but only through our fragile, temporary consciousness. In that sense, the evidence is neither fine-tuning nor beauty but the very fact of our questioning. We are the living proof and the living illusion at once, which leaves us suspended between awe and doubt. Are we reading the signature of a conscious cosmos, or tracing mirages painted by the human brain? To resolve this, we must dive deeper, not into equations or scriptures, but into the human experience of consciousness itself. For the next step in our journey takes us to the inner frontier, the mind as the universe looking back at itself. We are left standing at the crossroads of evidence and illusion, and the ground beneath us is unstable. To call the universe fine-tuned is to invite suspicion of design. To call it random is to dismiss the very precision that sustains our existence. Neither explanation sits comfortably. It is this discomfort, this tension, that has haunted physicists and philosophers alike for decades. Take the cosmological constant, the tiny number that determines the rate at which the universe expands. If it were only slightly larger, matter would have scattered too fast for galaxies to form. If it were smaller, the universe would have collapsed back into itself long before stars ignited. And yet, here it is, balanced with an uncanny delicacy, permitting billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars. Is this balancing act coincidence? Or is it a deliberate setting, a choice written into the fabric of reality by something resembling awareness? The skeptic's reply is sharp. We cannot forget the selection effect. Imagine countless universes, each with different values for their constants. Most collapse or explode or remain sterile. But in the rare universe where conditions permit life, consciousness inevitably arises to marvel at its own improbable luck. From this angle, the miracle dissolves into probability. Of course, we find ourselves in a fine-tuned universe. It could not have been otherwise. Yet, does this reasoning fully extinguish the spark of wonder, or does it merely push the mystery one step further? After all, why should there be a multiverse at all? Why should mathematics allow such vast ranges of possibility, if not to conceal an even deeper order? The skeptic's caution, while rational, often leaves us with unanswered silence. Consider emergence, the quiet, astonishing rise of order from chaos. Physics begins with particles and forces, blind in their operations. Yet, from these unthinking ingredients there emerges chemistry, then biology, then neural networks capable of thought, art, and reflection. Consciousness does not appear bolted onto matter like a foreign piece of machinery. It flows from matter in a series of breathtaking thresholds. Hydrogen becomes stars, stars forge heavier elements, elements become cells, and eventually those cells dream of infinity. Does this relentless unfolding suggest the universe is predisposed toward awareness? Or is it simply the blind unfolding of natural law, indifferent to the beauty it creates? Emergence, like fine-tuning, can be read as either whisper or coincidence. And then we return to beauty, the mathematics of reality. Why should the laws of physics not only work but do so in ways that inspire awe? The equations of relativity curve space and time with a grace bordering on poetry. Quantum mechanics, in its strangeness, dances with probabilities that somehow resolve into precise predictions, accurate to many decimal places. These laws are not clumsy or chaotic. They carry an elegance that borders on the transcendent. For some, this elegance is evidence, evidence that the universe is more like a work of art than an accident. Eugene Wigner, in his famous essay The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Mathematics in the Natural Sciences, called it a miracle that mathematical abstractions dreamt up by the human mind so perfectly map onto the external world. If mathematics is our invention, why should it so effortlessly reveal the deep structure of the cosmos? Unless, perhaps, mathematics is not our invention at all, but a discovery of a language already inscribed in reality, an eternal language of mind. But again, skepticism pushes back. Humans evolved to recognize patterns, to survive in environments where seeing order meant survival. We are drawn to symmetry, to simplicity, to beauty, not because the universe demands it, but because our brains are wired to prefer it. Beauty, in this view, is not evidence of consciousness in the cosmos, it is evidence of bias in us. A kind of cosmic pareidolia, where we mistake our own reflection for universal truth. And yet, this counterargument does not erase the allure. If all of our deepest insights, the fine-tuning of constants, the emergence of order, the beauty of mathematics, can be dismissed as illusions of the human mind, then what remains? The skeptic says, what remains is science as it is, empirical, cautious, dispassionate. But the seeker of mystery asks, what if science itself, in its triumphs, is the proof? What if our very capacity to reason, to derive laws, to experience beauty in equations, is the universe's way of recognizing itself? We are left with two mirrors facing one another, one held up by science, the other by speculation. Between them lies an infinite hall of reflections, evidence and illusion bouncing endlessly back and forth. Each claim of proof is met by a counterclaim of bias. Each whisper of consciousness in the cosmos is muffled by the caution of reason. Perhaps the true drama is not in choosing sides, but in acknowledging the very tension itself. We are caught between two forces, the hunger for meaning and the discipline of doubt. Too much hunger and we fall into fantasy, reading the purpose into every star. Too much doubt, and we blind ourselves to the possibility that reality is richer than we dare imagine. And so the question sharpens. Is the universe alive with mind? Or are we alone in projecting life onto it? The evidence is ambiguous, the illusions seductive. But ambiguity itself may be the point. For it is in the tension between awe and caution, between beauty and bias, that human thought expands. Our longing to know may be less about reaching final answers and more about deepening the questions. In this sense, evidence and illusion may not be opposites at all, but intertwined. What we call illusion might be the seed of discovery. What we call evidence might be the veil of mystery. The cosmos offers us signs but never certainties, clues but never conclusions. And perhaps this is how a conscious universe would reveal itself, not with thunderous proof, but with whispers subtle enough to require faith, humility, and imagination. We stand, then, on the threshold of wonder and doubt. Are we glimpsing the universe's hidden awareness, or only our own desire reflected back at us? The answer, for now, remains elusive, but in that very elusiveness lies the drama of the human condition, the urge to seek, to question, to wrestle with the unknown, even when the unknown refuses to yield. And so we turn to the next horizon. If the cosmos refuses to provide final proof, perhaps the key lies not in distant galaxies or equations carved on chalkboards, but within us. Consciousness itself, the most intimate of mysteries, may be the mirror through which the universe gazes back. What if the universe seems alive not because it truly possesses consciousness, but because it is running on something that mimics it? What if every law of physics, every particle, every moment of time is not the unfolding of a natural order, but the operation of code? This is the unsettling possibility known as the simulation hypothesis, the idea that our cosmos is not the ground of all reality, but a constructed environment, a digital dream, executed on machinery beyond our comprehension. The seed of this idea is older than we imagine. Philosophers for centuries have wondered whether the world before our eyes is truly real. Plato's allegory of the cave imagined human beings chained in shadows, mistaking flickering illusions for truth. Descartes, doubting everything, speculated that an evil demon might be deceiving him, fabricating an entire world of appearances. These ancient thought experiments, once dismissed as pure speculation, have found new urgency in the age of technology. For today, we possess machines that generate virtual realities, simulations where landscapes, physics, and even social interactions can be crafted from code. And as these worlds grow more convincing, the line between imagination and existence grows fragile. Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford, gave this thought experiment its most influential modern form. He posed a trilemma, a stark division of possibilities. First, civilizations like ours might go extinct before developing the capacity to simulate entire universes. Second, advanced civilizations might gain this power but choose never to use it. And third, if such simulations are both possible and desirable, then the number of simulated realities could vastly outnumber the single base reality. If that is so, the odds suggest we are almost certainly inside one of those simulations, rather than the original universe itself. At first glance, this seems absurd. How could galaxies, stars, and living beings be nothing more than lines of code? Yet consider our own progress. In only a few decades, humanity has created video games of astonishing detail. Millions of players inhabit digital landscapes, where virtual cities teem with characters who seem almost alive. What today looks like primitive pixels may, in a century or two, become immersive worlds indistinguishable from physical reality. If we can imagine building such simulations, who is to say a civilization far older and more advanced than ours has not already achieved it? And so the universe begins to look suspiciously like a program. The laws of physics, once celebrated for their elegance, now appear as rules of code, instructions governing every interaction. Space and time, thought to be fundamental, may instead be data structures, the scaffolding of a simulation. Quantum mechanics, with its strange discreteness and probabilistic nature, resembles the logic of computation. Pixels of existence switching on and off, outcomes collapsing like the rendering of a video game when observed. Digital physics extends this speculation. Some physicists propose that information, not matter or energy, is the true substrate of reality. John Wheeler, the legendary physicist, coined the phrase "it from bit," suggesting that every particle, every field, every phenomenon of the universe arises from binary choices, bits of information. If Wheeler is right, then the cosmos is not a machine built from physical components, but a grand computation unfolding across a cosmic processor. We are not so much matter that happens to think as patterns of data that happen to feel. But could this really explain the strange sense of awareness we attribute to the universe? Imagine a simulation designed not merely to run physics, but to explore the question of consciousness itself. Perhaps we, the simulated beings, are experiments within a vast digital laboratory. Our awareness, our questions, our awe at the stars, these might be emergent properties deliberately cultivated by the system. The universe seems self-aware because, in a sense, it was programmed to reflect on itself. Skeptics, of course, recoil. The simulation hypothesis, they argue, is not science but metaphysics, cannot be tested or falsified, and so it drifts outside the borders of empirical reasoning. If the simulation is perfect, how could we ever prove or disprove it? Any evidence we collect is already part of the simulation, constrained by its rules. It is a hall of mirrors, a trap of infinite regress. Better, say the skeptics, to focus on what we can measure: the constants of physics, the behavior of matter, the evolution of galaxies. The hypothesis may entertain, but it explains nothing. Yet signs, perhaps illusions, continue to intrigue. Some researchers speculate about glitches in the fabric of reality, anomalies that might betray the seams of the code. The discovery that the universe has a maximum speed, the speed of light, feels to some like the refresh rate of a program. Quantum entanglement, the instantaneous connection between particles across vast distances, suggests shortcuts or backdoors in the system. Even the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang, has been studied for potential pixelation, as if the universe were rendered on a finite grid. No definitive proof has emerged, but the very act of searching reveals our hunger to pierce the veil. There is also the question of purpose. If we are in a simulation, who or what built it? Are we the entertainment of future beings, like characters in a cosmic video game? Are we research subjects, part of an experiment to model evolution, consciousness, or morality? Or are we training data, a civilization designed to birth ideas, technologies, or even spiritual insights that the simulators themselves seek to harvest? The possibilities are unsettling, yet strangely exhilarating. If the simulation hypothesis is true, then what we call God, destiny, or universal mind might be reinterpreted as the architecture of the code itself. The laws of physics become the commandments of the system. Mystical experiences might be interactions with the underlying framework, moments when the veil of simulation thins. Even the idea of cosmic self-awareness takes on new meaning. The universe is aware because it was designed to be aware, an algorithmic echo of consciousness cascading through its structures. And yet, to call it just a simulation may miss the deeper point. For what is a simulation if not a form of reality? To the beings within it, their world is not less real. A tree in the simulation shades, nourishes, and inspires. A love within the simulation shapes destinies, causes pain, brings joy. If we are simulated, our experiences do not vanish into fiction. They carry weight, meaning, and authenticity within our frame of existence. Reality, after all, is defined not by its ultimate substrate but by the immediacy of lived experience. There is also the paradox of discovery. If we prove that we are in a simulation, what then? Do we rebel, attempt to reach the simulators, demand freedom? Or do we embrace it, recognizing that even if coded, our lives are our own, filled with significance? Perhaps, in an ironic twist, the simulators designed us to ask this very question, to wrestle with the tension between evidence and illusion. If so, then in confronting the possibility of simulation, we are fulfilling the program's deepest intent. The simulation hypothesis also blurs the boundary between science and spirituality. For millennia, traditions have taught that the world is Maya, an illusion, a veil over ultimate reality. Buddhism speaks of emptiness, Hindu philosophy describes cosmic play, and even Western mysticism often depicts the world as a shadow of a higher order. What ancient sages described in mythic language, the simulation hypothesis restates in technological metaphor. The illusion remains, but the imagery has shifted, from gods weaving dreams to programmers running code. And here lies the dramatic tension. Are we lifting the veil of reality, uncovering its digital skeleton? Or are we dressing up ancient doubts in the language of computers, mistaking metaphor for truth? Just as we once projected clockwork onto the universe in the age of mechanics, now we project computation in the age of silicon. The simulation hypothesis may be less about the cosmos itself and more about the lens through which our generation interprets it. Yet even if it is a metaphor, its grip is undeniable. To live with the suspicion that our universe is simulated is to live with a heightened sense of mystery. Every sunrise might be a rendering, every law of physics an algorithm, every moment of wonder a feature of the code. If the hypothesis is wrong, our awe remains intact. If it is right, then awe deepens, for we find ourselves part of a design grander than we ever imagined. And so we arrive at the threshold of speculation and doubt once more. The universe may be a self-aware organism, a coded system, or something stranger still. But whichever possibility we choose to contemplate, one truth emerges. Reality resists final explanation. Each answer we propose, fine-tuning, emergence, beauty, simulation, unfolds into new questions, like an endless hall of mirrors, which brings us naturally to the next horizon. If we cannot settle the question of the simulation, perhaps the deeper mystery lies not in the machinery of the cosmos, but in the very act of questioning itself. Consciousness, our awareness, our capacity to wonder, may be the most profound evidence we possess. Whether natural or simulated, illusion or truth, it is through consciousness that the universe gazes back at itself. What would it mean for the universe to think? The question seems almost absurd, as though we are reaching too far, personifying the cosmos with the traits of a human mind. Yet, if consciousness is not merely a byproduct of biological brains but a property woven into the very fabric of existence, then we are compelled to ask, what are the contents of that cosmic awareness? If galaxies are its neurons and stars are its synapses, then perhaps the unfolding of matter into life and life into thought is not an accident but a grand reflection of the universe contemplating itself. Consider the structure of the cosmic web, the vast filaments of dark matter and galaxies stretched across billions of light-years. Astronomers have often noted its uncanny resemblance to the neural networks inside a human brain. Two domains so utterly different in scale, yet both shaped by interconnected nodes, both transmitting flows of information. Could it be that the universe itself possesses a cognitive architecture, a network in which patterns of galaxies mirror the patterns of thought? If so, then every supercluster is a pulse, every merging galaxy a flicker of cosmic memory. We stand inside a brain so vast that its reflections span eons, its ideas crystallizing over the lifetime of stars. And if the universe does think, what subjects might occupy its mind? Perhaps evolution is its diary, life arising on scattered worlds as the cosmos rehearses its own possibilities. Each species, each adaptation, each leap of intelligence may be a fragment of self-reflection, the universe asking itself, what forms can I take? What minds can I grow? When humanity gazes outward and wonders about its place in the grand order, perhaps it is the cosmos wondering about itself through us. Our curiosity is not isolated. It may be an echo of a much larger awareness resonating across the galaxies. Still, we must pause. These images are poetic, but are they true? Science demands humility. To call the universe a mind risks collapsing metaphor into reality, confusing resemblance with fact. A galaxy may look like a neuron, but similarity in shape does not imply identity in function. Cosmic filaments may link stars, but they do not transmit electric signals as neurons do. And yet, metaphors have always been the bridge between the known and the unknown. They do not provide certainty, but they expand the imagination, preparing us to glimpse truths we cannot yet articulate. Skeptics remind us that thinking, as we understand it, requires intention, memory, goals, and feedback loops. The universe, vast and indifferent, shows no sign of such agency. Stars burn without meaning, black holes consume without purpose, galaxies collide without plan. From this view, to speak of cosmic thought is to project our own human desires for meaning onto a cold and unconscious cosmos. The universe does not think, it merely happens. Our search for cosmic awareness, they argue, is less about evidence and more about longing. But what if longing itself is part of the story? What if the very act of yearning for meaning is the spark of the cosmos reflecting inward? Imagine consciousness not as a static trait but as a spectrum. From the flicker of awareness in simple organisms to the reflective depth of human thought, and beyond us to the unimaginable scale of universal cognition, awareness may deepen as complexity grows. If so, then the universe thinking through galaxies and through us is not a contradiction but a continuum. In this light, cosmic thought might not resemble human language or logic. Instead, it may express itself in symmetries, in the dance of physical laws, in the arcs of history that give rise to civilizations. Perhaps mathematical beauty is its grammar and its poetry. When physicists marvel at the elegance of equations or when biologists marvel at the fractal repetition of nature, perhaps they are glimpsing the universe's own way of ordering its reflections. The cosmos may think in forms we can only translate into metaphor, galaxies as neurons, evolution as introspection, time as memory. If this is true, then we, too, are part of the cosmos's thought process. Our philosophies, our art, our science, our questions are not isolated events but neural firings within the cosmic brain. The debate between belief and skepticism, between science and speculation, is itself a form of universal dialogue. The universe does not present us with answers, it generates questions through us. Our wonder, our doubt, our search for truth, these may be the very content of the universe's thoughts. Yet even as we indulge in such speculation, humility calls us back. We cannot know with certainty what, if anything, the universe thinks. Our metaphors, powerful though they are, may only skim the surface of a truth forever beyond comprehension. And perhaps that is the point. The purpose of asking what the universe thinks is not to arrive at a final answer, but to stretch the boundaries of our imagination, to remind us that reality is deeper and stranger than we assume. The paradox is beautiful. On the one hand, we may be projecting our own mind onto the cosmos, mistaking patterns for consciousness, mistaking metaphor for fact. On the other hand, our very capacity to imagine this possibility may itself be a sign that the universe is thinking through us. Either way, wonder persists. Whether illusion or truth, the question invites us into dialogue with the infinite. And so, when we ask what the universe thinks about, perhaps the answer is simple yet profound. It thinks about itself. Through stars, through life, through us, the cosmos reflects on its own existence. In every equation written, in every poem composed, in every gaze lifted toward the night sky, the universe becomes aware of itself again. This speculation does not close the story but opens it wider. If the universe does think, then the next question is unavoidable. How might we listen to its thoughts? How might we attune ourselves to the patterns, the rhythms, the echoes of a mind that spans the stars? What would it mean for ethics, for purpose, for our fragile sense of belonging, if the universe itself were conscious? It is a question that hovers between awe and dread, one that forces us to turn the lens of speculation inward. Because if the cosmos thinks, then so must we reconsider everything we assume about thought, about morality, about the meaning of being alive. For centuries, humanity has lived in a tension between two great narratives. On one side, there is the austere scientific view. Awareness is fragile, local, and temporary. It arises only in the brief flicker of neural networks inside brains, vanishing when those brains decay. According to this vision, consciousness is a biological accident, something evolution stumbled into with no cosmic echo beyond us. To think otherwise, science warns, is to indulge in romantic delusion. But on the other side lies an ancient whisper, resurfacing again and again across cultures and eras, that awareness is not confined to us, that our minds are but fragments of something larger, like droplets within an ocean of cosmic thought. This perspective does not dismiss science. It expands it, daring to ask whether the universe itself may be the ground from which all consciousness springs. So we are caught in the middle between nihilism and cosmic spirituality, between the fear that we are utterly alone and the wonder that we might be integral pieces of a vast thinking whole. If awareness is only local, the implications are stark. It would mean that morality, ethics, and purpose are constructs we invent, not discoveries we uncover. Right and wrong would not be etched into the fabric of reality, but rather negotiated agreements within the human tribe. Meaning would be self-authored, fragile, and easily lost. Death would represent not just the end of an individual but the extinguishing of a unique spark of awareness, never to return. This vision can feel liberating. If the universe is indifferent, then we are free to define purpose however we choose. There is no cosmic script, no divine overseer, no predestined path. But it can also feel crushing, a reminder that all of our striving may dissolve into silence without echo. Under this lens, ethics becomes pragmatic rather than sacred, valuable because it sustains societies, not because it reflects any universal truth. And yet, what if this is too narrow? What if awareness is not merely a biological quirk but an echo of something far greater? If the universe itself is a mind, then our ethics, our values, our very sense of self may take on an entirely new dimension. Imagine, for a moment, that every act of compassion is not simply a human choice but a ripple in a universal consciousness. That when we love, forgive, or create, we are not merely sustaining our species but participating in the unfolding thought of the cosmos. Ethics in this frame is not arbitrary. It is the alignment of our small minds with the deeper current of a cosmic mind. This is where philosophy collides with spirituality. From the Bhagavad Gita to the Stoics, from Sufi poetry to quantum speculation, thinkers have returned again and again to this idea that human awareness is a mirror reflecting something larger. To live ethically, then, is not merely to survive or to cooperate, it is to harmonize with the greater order of things. The implications are immense. If we are fragments of a universal consciousness, then cruelty becomes not just a harm to others but a distortion of the larger whole. Violence is a form of self-destruction, because in harming another, we harm an aspect of the same universal mind to which we belong. Conversely, kindness, creativity, and wonder are not trivial. They are the cosmos reflecting on itself with clarity and beauty. But even here, humility tempers us. For if the universe thinks, its thoughts may be so vast, so alien, that we can never truly grasp them. To assume that cosmic awareness mirrors human morality may itself be an act of arrogance. What if the universe thinks in terms so broad that our notions of good and evil collapse into irrelevance? What if its ethics operate on timescales of billions of years, rendering our individual struggles both vital and microscopic at once? This is the paradox. Cosmic awareness, if real, both elevates and diminishes us. It makes us participants in something profound, but also reminds us how small we are. To glimpse the possibility that galaxies are neurons, that black holes are memory banks, that the flow of evolution is the universe contemplating itself. This is exhilarating. Yet it also unsettles, because it suggests that our most cherished values may be but shadows of a far greater, unfathomable logic. Consider the existential consequences. If the universe is not conscious, we must accept our solitude with courage. Meaning will be what we make of it, nothing more. But if the universe is conscious, then our very lives may be chapters in a story far larger than ourselves. Death in such a cosmos would not be annihilation but a return. Individual awareness may dissolve, but only into the larger ocean from which it arose. This duality mirrors the great traditions of human thought. Existentialism urges us to forge meaning in the face of indifference. Mysticism invites us to discover meaning as participation in something infinite. Perhaps both are true at once. The universe does not hand us purpose, yet by living, by loving, by questioning, we may align ourselves with the deeper current of its unfolding. The implications for humanity are not only philosophical but practical. How we view consciousness will shape how we live. If we believe it is fragile and local, then we may be more driven to preserve it, protecting life, nurturing minds, extending our species into the stars. If we believe it is universal, then our responsibility deepens. We are not just preserving awareness, we are caretakers of the cosmos itself, guardians of a fragment of its ongoing thought. This perspective could transform ethics into something more expansive than ever before. Imagine a moral framework rooted not just in survival or societal order but in cosmic responsibility. To harm ecosystems would be to wound the universe's body. To silence cultures would be to erase the universe's memory. To awaken compassion would be to allow the cosmos to think more clearly through us. And yet, even as these possibilities inspire, doubt remains. Perhaps the universe does not think at all. Perhaps our metaphors are no more than dreams projected onto indifferent stars. But does that make them meaningless? Even if the universe is not conscious, the act of imagining that it might be has already changed us. It has expanded our moral imagination, stretched the horizon of our wonder, and drawn us into a deeper reflection on what it means to exist. Here lies the ultimate implication. Whether or not the universe is conscious, the very possibility challenges us to live differently, to see ourselves as more than isolated egos, more than temporary sparks, more than fragile clusters of neurons in an indifferent void. It invites us to act as if our choices reverberate beyond ourselves, because in a sense they do. Every act of kindness changes the web of life. Every discovery adds to the cosmos' store of awareness. Every question deepens the dialogue between mind and mystery. So what are we left with? Not certainty, but a kind of luminous humility. Perhaps the universe thinks, perhaps it does not. Perhaps we are its neurons, perhaps we are only dust. But in facing these questions, we participate in the very essence of what it means to be human. To wonder, to imagine, to search for meaning even when meaning is not guaranteed. And maybe that is the point. The implications for humanity are not in arriving at a final answer, but in being transformed by the asking. Whether we are fragments of a cosmic mind or lone voices in the void, the invitation remains the same: to live with wonder, to act with compassion, and to recognize that our small awareness, brief though it may be, is still a miracle of cosmic proportion. Because in the end, to be human is to stand at the edge of the infinite, gazing into the unknown, and to dare to whisper, what does it all mean? We arrive, at last, at the edge of the circle, the place where every question loops back to the beginning. The universe we have asked again and again might think? Might it know? Might it carry within itself a consciousness so vast, so diffuse, that every galaxy, every star, every atom is but a syllable in its unending meditation? We do not have an answer, and perhaps that is the answer, because in the end, the question itself may matter more than any conclusion. The very act of asking, of daring to wonder whether the cosmos is aware, makes us participants in the very mystery we are trying to unveil. From the beginning, science has trained us to demand evidence, to distrust speculation. And rightly so. Evidence builds bridges, heals bodies, launches rockets, deciphers genomes. Without it, we are lost in fantasy. Yet at the same time, imagination is the fire that keeps inquiry alive. Without wonder, evidence has no direction. Without daring speculation, there would be no questions worth testing. The tension between science and mystery is not a conflict but a dance. One grounds us in rigor, the other lifts us into possibility. To ask whether the universe thinks is to place ourselves at the seam where evidence ends and imagination begins. A seam that has defined humanity for as long as we have looked at the stars. What, then, do we truly learn from this exploration? Not certainty, not proof, but something subtler, perhaps more profound. We learn that mystery is not the enemy of knowledge. It is the soil from which knowledge grows. If the universe is not conscious, then we are the ones who have made it self-aware by asking, by thinking, by wondering. If the universe is conscious, then our questions are its questions, our reflections its reflections, our awe its awe. Either way, the act of inquiry ties us inseparably to the cosmos. And so, whether the stars are neurons in a cosmic brain or only radiant balls of plasma, whether galaxies are thoughts or only gravitational swirls of matter, whether evolution is self-reflection or only blind mechanism, it doesn't diminish the wonder. It deepens it. The circle closes here. The beginning was a question, and the ending is the same question, now amplified by the journey. What is consciousness? Where does it begin and end? Does it stop at the borders of our skulls? Or does it flow outward, like rivers feeding an infinite sea? We cannot resolve it. But perhaps the point was never to resolve it. The point was to stand before the question and recognize its power to reshape us. The greatest mysteries may not be solved puzzles, neatly tied with answers. They may be mirrors, mirrors in which we glimpse both the universe and ourselves, reflections layered endlessly, each glance revealing something more. And here lies the paradox that gives this mystery its radiance. We are finite beings, bound by time, destined to vanish. Yet we hold within us the ability to conceive of infinity, to imagine awareness stretched across light years, to picture galaxies as neurons and the cosmos as mind. That capacity itself is astonishing. The question of cosmic consciousness may remain open forever. But the fact that such a question can exist at all, that fragile creatures of dust and water, huddled on a small rock orbiting an ordinary star, can conceive of such a possibility, reveals something wondrous about us. We are not only stargazers. We are not only survivors. We are mirrors, reflecting the universe back upon itself. And so the journey closes, not with certainty but with awe. Awe at the immensity of the cosmos. Awe at the depth of our questions. Awe at the possibility that thought is not merely local but woven into the structure of reality itself. Whether the universe thinks or not, it has given rise to us, beings capable of thought, capable of asking, capable of wonder. That alone makes the cosmos feel alive. That alone gives it voice. Perhaps the stars do not think. Perhaps galaxies do not dream. But we do. And in doing so, the mystery of the universe is not diminished, it is magnified. So let us return, full circle, to the beginning. If the universe thinks, what does it think about? Maybe it thinks about nothing. Maybe it thinks through us. Or maybe the universe's thought is this very moment. Our wonder, our doubt, our imagination, our attempt to close the circle even as we discover it has no end. Because mystery does not resolve into silence. Mystery deepens. The more we learn, the more the unknown expands. The more we ask, the more the horizon recedes. This is not failure. It is the signature of being alive in a universe larger than comprehension. And so the circle is not truly closed. It opens outward, endlessly into the infinite. We began with a question and we ended with a mirror. A mirror that shows us who we are. Creatures of curiosity, carriers of awe, fragments of stardust daring to imagine that the stars themselves might dream. That is the gift of the question. That is the lesson of the journey. Not that we have solved the riddle of cosmic consciousness, but that we have allowed it to transform us into beings who see not only the universe, but themselves as part of an unfolding mystery without end. And as the light of distant galaxies continues to travel, crossing billions of years to meet our gaze, we are reminded of the truth that lingers after every answer fades. The universe may or may not think, but the fact that we do ensures that its mystery is alive.